Hello everybody and welcome to today's live webinar, Green Screen Digital Cinematography, where we will be exploring green screen compositing techniques. Sounds complicated, but it's not. It's actually going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to go through all the steps and how this works. So welcome to the live webinar. Thanks for joining us, and definitely want to thank all of our partners in making this a reality, and they are the Canada Council for the Arts and our library partners. So we have the Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, and the Wasaga Beach Public Library. So welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us on this rainy Saturday here in the Blue Mountains. And my name is Tom Strnad. I'm the lead digital artist for the Creator Space, and I'll be taking you through today's journey of green screen production. So it's a lot of fun to utilize, and although we're looking at video, we can also explore this in photography. So there's similar techniques. So we'll look at that in some future webinars, but the same idea applies with using green screen and that kind of idea. So yeah, let's continue without any further ado. So green screen digital cinematography. So today we will look at the following. So we'll look at what is green screen, what does that mean, setting up lighting for green screen. We have a whole demo set up here, and pretty cool. I just want to showcase how it doesn't have to be a big setup. It can be quite compact. It can be literally, I'm using a room, our editing suite studio, that is probably the size of a small dining room. So you don't need a huge space. That's the great thing. So setting up lighting for green screen, look at that. Capturing a background. So with green screen, because we're getting rid of the background, we also need a background. So that's something to think about. And again, you can capture all of that yourself. Then we'll talk about some best practices and concepts, and we'll actually do a demo then of compositing of the green screen footage using the free Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve software. So a lot of the cool thing too is that what we're featuring and showing are pieces of equipment that you can access if you're a member of the Blue Mountains Public Library, and soon at the Wasaga Beach Public Library, and also the Collingwood Public Library. This will be pieces of equipment that you can take out, so you can actually do this and reproduce this in the comfort of your own home or living room, like I suggested. So that's the fun thing. And the software, again, it's totally free. So I'm utilizing in the demo the exact free Blackmagic Resolve software, and that way, what you're seeing here is something you can achieve. So you just basically need a computer, and if you don't have access to a computer, if you're in the Blue Mountains, you can access the Blue Mountains Creator Space computers. There's the 2 iMacs that you can book out and utilize right there in the library. And more will be coming in the spring, in March, in Collingwood and Wasaga Beach as well. So really excited about that. So a lot of access for everyone. But and the best thing about today's overview and the workshop is that you can rewatch this with Crowdcast. So by registering, you can then rewatch it basically immediately once when we finish. So if you feel that you've missed something, don't worry. You can rewatch it and go over it again and try it out on your own. Okay, so in this workshop, I just wanted to outline some of the equipment that we'll be using, the digital cinematography equipment. So again, these are available through the Blue Mountains Public Library, Wasaga Beach. Coming up in November, we'll have this equipment available for loan, and Collingwood will be in the spring of 2021. So the equipment that we're using today is the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, really big long name. It can also be the BPCC 4K. Is the acronym, and we're using prime lenses, so fixed focal length, so they're not zooms. And most of the cameras in this whole live webinar are Blackmagic cameras, so different versions of them. But the one that we're actually shooting the green screen with is the Blackmagic 4K that will be available soon at the Wasaga Beach Library and currently at the Blue Mountains Library and eventually in the Collingwood one. And then we have the video tripod with ball head. There's a few versions of this, and the ball head really allows you to balance, so level. So, if you think of photography, if you're trying to level your shots to make sure that the horizon line's straight so that it's not out of balance. Then we have the newer 480 LED lights with stands. These are all lights that can be taken out from the libraries. And the best part too is they're actually quite cost effective. They're about $75 to $80 to purchase one. So they're even affordable if eventually you want to get some on your own too. But for the start, we really encourage you to go and take these out. Just like you would take out a book, you can take out these lights. Then the green screen, there's some various options in that, and we'll talk about that today. So it could be really simple. You can just buy a piece of fabric, order it online. I think Amazon and different online facilities have them in $15 ranges, really, really cost effective. You can use paint, you can paint a wall, and then in today's demo, I'm using a bit of a kind of a foam piece, and this is like outdoor rated. I've used this before, and that's the cool thing. You can actually do green screen outside, so putting it in front of someone and then changing where they are. And then you're using the sun as your light source, so you can even go without any lights and just shoot totally outside, and that's a really cool option too. Okay, so what is green screen? So green screen, we see this a lot, green screens in big action movies and or blue screen. Now, so the use of green screen is using green color to create a transparent background or alpha channel. And that can then have a different background or element replacing what is green. So the green screen lets you basically take out everything that's green in the image and it makes it transparent. And then you can add stuff behind it. So compositing is putting both of those elements together. So like a background and the original video footage, and the green stuff becomes transparent and disappears. It can also be used sometimes to change the element. So we've probably seen shots of that, of people, you'll see shots in action films, like actors, they're on like a green screen ship, and then they basically take that out and they can put them into a spaceship. I think more recently I was looking at some Mulan behind the scenes stuff, and they were riding green screen horses, so they can add different horses after. So anything like that. Otherwise, you can be quite familiar. You see a lot of the things sometimes. If you've ever seen a film shoot somewhere in the area, there's lots even happening in this area where there's a big background, and it can be used for extension. So you might have, let's say you're shooting outside a house and you want to change what's beside the house. So you can put a green screen beside your house and change what's there. So maybe you want to replace your neighbors and you can put a different background. So fun things like that you can do. So the idea here is that the concept is using green or blue, and it's based mainly what's in the image. So the reason for using it is that humans, we don't have a lot of green or blue in our skin tone. So it's an ideal solution to create these composites, because that way you can get rid of green, but you're not getting rid of the person, right? So, obviously the thing to think about here is these are the big exceptions. Let's say today I have a couple of like toys, like stuffed toys that I'm using. There's no green in them. But for example, if I use like a green alien and I was using green screen, that would be a problem, because by removing green, I would be removing that green alien. Right? So let's say you have plants that are green. You want to make sure that those aren't there if you're using green screen. So if you have a lot of green, you might want to then instead use blue. And there aren't really big differences in it, but it really comes down to what's in your images. So if you have a lot of blue, you definitely want to stick to green. So just think about what your images are that you want to composite with, right? So a lot of just pre-planning, so that you don't, if you're going to get rid of the green and there's a lot of green in what your element is that you want to composite around to create your transparency, make sure it doesn't have a lot of green. And that comes down to people's clothing. So if you have people and if your subjects are humans and they're wearing a green shirt, then they will disappear with the background as well. So you definitely can't have the person wearing the same kind of colors in their clothing as what is in the green screen behind them. So same idea, if you're using blue screen, you can't have the person wearing blue, because then they'll disappear as well, right? So just some of the kind of tips of what you should or shouldn't do. Green screen with a background. So this is what we're going to demo today. So just a background. You can create this with a broomstick and some lighting stands. You can just hang it from a curtain rod. It can be done in many ways. So this can be achieved, I note here, with paper. You can buy a roll of green screen paper. It can be fabric. In this case, I'm using like a foam exterior type one. It can be a piece of fabric from Fabricland, or you can paint it. And the cool thing is, when I'll show you guys the compositing in DaVinci, you choose what the green is. So it doesn't have to be a perfect green. You just want to use something that's not necessarily in your foreground or your subject. And the background standard kit is an easy way to achieve this effect. So we have some of these at the Blue Mountains Library. We're going to have some other ones coming into play. Wasaga Beach, I believe, has a green screen setup, and libraries are slowly getting into some setups like that. So we're really hoping to help build these so that there's some kind of permanent access or kind of shooting spaces. But again, really simple fabric. It can be over a window. And the key here is that it's a background. So this can be all the way in the total background. It doesn't have to be near your subject. It could be on a window. It can be on the wall. It doesn't have to be anywhere near the subject. The further away, in fact, the better. You just want to make sure you're covering the whole area that needs to be green screened. Okay, so lighting for green screen. Here's just some quick pointers, and we'll look through it in the actual hands-on demo. The overall goal in lighting for green screen is to have the following lighting. So you want to have even lighting over the green screen, no shadows. So it really should be even. I like to even say it's flat. It's really just lighting the green screen. There's definitely no mood or contouring of light. You want to ensure that one light is not brighter than the other, because you need to really use, I mean, technically you could do with one, but I'm using two for the demo today. So you really need to use at least two lights. So you want to have them totally, if they're on a dimmer, to be at the equal level. You don't want to have one that's brighter or than the other, because then you will lack even illumination. Soft lighting is better for green screen. So that, again, helps it to be even without any shadows, right? So soft lighting. So these newer LED panels that you can get from the libraries have a soft plastic plexiglass in front of them. And that's great, because then it's soft, it's very even, it doesn't have kind of hot spots in it. So nice soft lighting is the idea. You can also do this with soft light bulbs or using like a China lantern that you can get from a place like IKEA. Those can be really great to put a soft illumination as well if you want to kind of build your own permanent setup. Then using the lighting behind the subject and close to the green screen. So the green screen lighting should not be used to light your subject. It's purely just lighting that green screen. Again, the further away, the better, because you're not getting what's called green screen spill. And spill can then come back at the subject and illuminate, put a green like spill into them. So you want to have it really clean, far away from them, not close to them. Sometimes it's not possible. Again, like, you know, if an actor was on, like I said, in Mulan, riding a green screen horse, like a green element like that, they're right on it. So there might be some spill, right? So we're talking about more of this background today, background green screen use that can be great for right now as we're doing webinars. You might want to put a background behind you and then green screen yourself out. So those kind of elements can be used. So these are the 4 main points. So you can review this again, but we'll look at how that can change things, and we'll look at adjusting things to show how things can or cannot work. Okay, so then when you're lighting your subject with a green screen in the background, you want to ensure your subject is still that your subject lighting is not adding shadows, right? So you still want to light your foreground or your subjects, but you don't want to add shadows for them onto the green screen. So if you have a really strong light at your subject, you could cast a shadow onto the green screen. And that's what we want to try and avoid, to make sure that we don't end up doing that. Because a really strong light could put a harsh shadow onto the green screen, and then all of a sudden you lose that even illumination. So then it's harder for the program and the software to figure out what you want to get rid of in the green screen versus what you want to keep if you have a shadow, because the shadow changes the tint of the green. So we got to think about how we're trying to create even illumination so we have even tinting. So that when you say, let's remove this type of green, you're specifically removing that type of green and not something else, right? So the lighting of your subject is totally separate from the green screen. I don't want you guys to think that we should be lighting the subject and then also use that for the green screen, right? We want to ideally, again, these are ideal circumstances, have a totally separate green screen lighting that's flat even. And then we want to light our subjects to put a little bit of contour and so on. Now, how can we do that? So we can still go back to our 3-point lighting. So 3-point lighting, what is this? So we did this in an earlier webinar. We really have a key light, a fill light, a backlight. So in this case, I have a little bit of fill coming from some windows here. So I'm using this all in daylight lighting in terms of color temperature. They're all in daylight balanced mode. So 5600 degrees Kelvin, so that's daylight, which is blue. ish type of lighting versus the warmer lighting. So that's how I've set up the camera to be 5600 degrees Kelvin. The lights are all using the what's called white in the newer settings. So they're white versus yellow. Yellow is the tungsten setting. So I have them all set the same. And now what I'm doing is key light. I have a bit of fill light, again, just from, there's a bit of window light coming in here. And then I can have a backlight if I want as well. So the 3-point lighting, here's a diagram. So backlight, your camera, you have the fill light that's on an angle, key light that's 100%, fill light's usually 50%, backlight, you know, can vary between 20 to even 100% as well, depending on how much separation you want. So that's kind of our goal in the 3-point lighting. So this is totally what you can still do with the subject, and you can see that most of it won't really be falling on the background because it's on angles. And that's what I wanted to reiterate, that we're lighting from angles. If we light from the front, where the camera is, and any of this, it makes the green screen harder to composite after, and it makes a shadow on the background. So, you know, that's why 3-point lighting, and the same idea with the green screen. If I'm gonna show you guys how we're lighting it from the sides, and by lighting it from the sides, we make sure that we're not getting direct, like front lighting, which can be more direct and harsh and shadowy, right? So 3-point lighting is our friend in terms of lighting, because you can see not a lot of light will go in the background in this case, and that's what we want to achieve. Okay, so let's explore green screen production. Let's set up a demo. So I'm just going to switch over. I have a few camera angles here. So I have this wide angle here. So this is in the studio here. You can see there's a light on the left and right, and we have our subjects on a box. And again, you can see it's just the editing suite, so it's not really big. It's kind of, like I said, a dining room size, so you don't need a huge space. Sometimes we think green screen needs a big warehouse space or studio space, but no, you can actually really comfortably do this in a dining room or bedroom. A garage can be really great too, and just even a part of it. So here you can see we got a subject, we have a light left, right, we got that background. You can see it's like this was wrapped up a little bit, and I should have let it kind of ventilate more to get rid of any creases in it. It's a styrofoam based element. So yeah, let's have a look at, I'm gonna just kind of talk through what everything is here. I'm just gonna get myself in here, and hopefully you can still see me. Okay, so we have that camera there. So this is our light for the subject. So it's our key light right here. Then I have a little bit of fill light coming from a window up here, right? That's coming on the subjects there. Then what I have are two lights on two 45-degree angles. So you can kind of see with my arms lit what that looks like, right? So this one's shining, this one's shining. And they're both at 100%. Even the soft plexiglass that these come with is left on it so that it's nice and soft, right? So they're both at 100% equal lighting. Right, then I have this background stand that I've just put with a little clamp here. This is kind of a foam material. This could be paper, it could be fabric. You can, kind of use any type of materials. Really just fabric can work well. You can take a piece of drywall or, and paint it green, right? So any way that you can kind of achieve this type of green. People ask, is there, an exact type of green? No, not necessarily. There used to be like, okay, it needs to be chroma key green, but now in the software, we're actually we can pick, and using the paint sampler, we decide, okay, that's the green we want to take out. So we don't have to actually worry about what the green is. Just this kind of a light green. I wouldn't go too dark, but this type of, kind of primary green color is what we need. So you can see it's just on a background stand, right? We got the two lights here. And then what I'm trying to achieve is to have a really even illumination, right? So we have that nice even illumination. So everything is kind of evenly lit, right? So this is our setup. So again, we have a little bit of this is our key light. This is coming on the subject. And you can see because it's on an angle, none of this light is hitting the background. Right? It's all just coming over here, and it's spilling out over here. So I'm not affecting this background with that light, but you can see I am affecting it with the two side lights. So these two, 45, 45, putting the light on there, right? So you can see I start to get like into shadows from these lights. But if I'm not there, you can see it's pretty evenly illuminated, which is really fantastic. So let's have a look at what this looks like in terms of on the actual camera. So let me just go over here. So this is from the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera, directly filming the subject. So you can see how pretty flat green that background is, even though you can, here there's a little bit more contrast in this shot. So you can see those kind of folds and stuff. But look at, once I get that evenly lit lighting in the background, it starts to disappear, any of those variations in shadows. So it's really cool to be able to show it that way and to not worry about, what's, those kind of little wrinkles in it. They kind of disappear once we get our nice flat, even lighting. So again, you can see we have the front lighting. So let's just play with what that lighting looks like. So I just want to show you guys what's happening with our lighting, right? So you can see that's our key light, and I'm just putting a little bit because the room already has quite a bit of light just from windows and things. So I'm kind of using some of the ambient light, and some of the light from my webinar camera is bouncing around a little bit, so that's fine. But you can see, so if without a key light, our subjects are just in total shadow. So that can work too, but we want to light them, right? So I'm putting a little bit of light here, right, on that one. It's about 25% of its total available light, right? And so that's that. Now let's look at what happens if we mess up our background lights. So I'm going to turn one off. Look at that. So now you can see all those shadow wrinkles, right? So I got rid of the one that's on the right side, right? And I've turned it off. And now I'm going back up to 100%. And look at that. It's flattened it all out beautifully. So that can give us a nice clean green chroma key composite. So we can remove that background, right? So that's really cool. So that's what's really important to remember, is if we, end up messing up with, one of the background elements here with the light, we can quickly have shadows if we don't have two lights. So this is what it would look like if I only used one light. Not ideal, and it's gonna create a really bad chroma key removal. So it would be really hard to get a good clean removal of the background there. So again, you can see that's that one. Now let's go on the other side, and I just want to show you the complementary element of using the other side. And here's the same idea. So look, if I turn this one off, same idea. See, we get all the shadows, and we're really ruining our composite of what we can do with that flat green screen. So you can see there's still a little bit of, a little bit of shadow still happening, right? But it's pretty flat. Now look at, here's something that's important too. So best practices is that, we are using, if we go back to some of the manual cinematography workshops that we've done, you can see some of these on our YouTube channel as well. But, so I'm about 2 feet away from the lens using a 35mm lens, a prime lens, to the subject here. So they're in focus. But look, the background is way back here. It's about 3.5 feet away from the foreground. So it's pretty far away, right? And look, it's soft. It's out of focus. So by having that layer separation of what's in focus, that's an extra added element that can really help us with a better green screen, by having the green screen out of focus. If it's sharp, all of these little lines or pieces of dust, there could be, this was in storage, so there's a little bit of, I noticed there's a little bit of sawdust from when I was cutting some wood, and things like that happen. So by having that sharpness, I would see all of that. But because it's blurred, you can see how my hand is blurred. See how blurry that is? Because it's blurred, it makes it a soft background. So that's ideal for a green screen. Okay, so that really takes us through. So again, we've set up the green screen, we have our lights, and we're able to do the green screen setup that way. So let's just look at this one more time. So we got a big sheet. In this case, it's kind of a foam type. It can be used for exterior. We have a light on this side. We have a light over here on this side, right? So light, 2 45-degree angles shining on this green screen to flatten it all out. Then we have our subjects here. And you can see this is about, like I said, about 3.5 feet or about a meter away from the background to the people, the subjects here, right? And then I have the cameras right here. You can see how this is the Blackmagic camera right here, and with the lens, and this is only about, I would say closer to about 50 centimeters or 1.5 feet distance there. So they're in focus, right? And then we have this light right here is our key light here to just give them a little bit of illumination so they're not totally dark. And that's it. That's how simple this can be. Now imagine you could take the same element, this screen, put it outside, right? Using just exterior sunlight. It's gonna be totally flat as long as the sun's facing it, right? That's really nice and flat. And then your subject can be in front of it, and then you can remove elements like that. You don't even have to light it because the sun will do it. So it's a great trick if you need to get something, let's say you want to get a quick shot of something to create a composite and separate it. You don't have a lot of lights available. Take a green screen, put it outside, put your subject in front of it, and then you can remove them. Remove that background quite easily using just the sunlight, right? So that's a really cool way to deal with that. Okay, so let's move on into what do we do with the footage? So I've pre-recorded a couple of shots just so that we can demo the technical aspects of what we can do with it. And we'll have a Q&A at the end too. So we'll have the last 10 minutes or so to answer any questions. So if you have any questions, you can start asking them in the ask a question tab. And then I'll get to all of them at the end of this webinar, right? So we've gone through the whole process of how do we, get that green screen set up. We got that background. We have our side lights. We have some of our foreground elements, right? So we got this setup there. So I'm quite happy with that. I'm like, okay, this looks nice and flat. That's kind of what we're trying to achieve. That's the goal. What I can do too is once I'll have some of this footage, I'll be able to post it. And then anybody can, you can access it as well. So we'll send a link with some of the footage. So you can try doing a composite after with this footage as well in the DaVinci software. So we'll do the kind of a setup where you can access the footage and then figure out how to follow along what I'm doing next. So we're gonna take it over now to the DaVinci software. So let's just flip over here. I'm just gonna change our screen. I just got to get over to the software. Okay, so DaVinci software. Okay, so for today, we're not going to necessarily look at, what the setup process is for DaVinci Resolve. But here, what I've done is I've basically shot a background and a foreground. And you can see how I've been able to take the two characters on the wooden crate, and I've put them onto a background that I filmed earlier this morning, which is just outside of my edit suite. And that I've been able to composite them from inside here to outside. And I was quite happy with the result. It's pretty clean and smooth. And I'll take us through how to do this. So we do have full DaVinci Resolve getting started videos on our YouTube channel. So you can access that via www.tbmcs.ca. And that will take you through the process of starting a project, bringing in footage, and so on. So I'm not going to go right into that, bringing the footage in process. But what I want to do is just get right into the compositing process and how that will work. So this is what we've composited. And what I want to do now is show you guys how we can do that in terms of the green screen. So you can see here's our original footage. This is the shot that I just showed you guys with the camera here, right? So it's the same footage. I've brought it into DaVinci Resolve, and I'm just in the edit tab here. So in terms of what I've imported the footage, and I've brought it in right here. So I have it all available to click on. So I have a few different shots. I have backgrounds, and I have some shots here that were a bit darker, and here with a little bit more light. So just a comparison of see when there's a little bit less key light and when there's a little bit more key light. And this is kind of a nice range. I like that. Then I shot a background that's out of focus, and I shot one that's sharp. And this is interesting because we can now decide if our background is in focus or not as well. So there's a tendency to think, okay, well, I'm going to just have a sharp background and, work on it that way. But remember, we've shot the green screen to be out of focus. So your background can be out of focus as well. And we'll look at the difference between those two. Okay, so let's, I'm going to just bring this, this shot in here. There we go. Okay, so this is how it starts. So what we want to do is we want to have video 1 and video 2. So what we're doing now is the compositing process is basically, it's like layers, right? So we're going to have our background is layer 1, video 1, and our foreground is layer video 2, right? So we need to layer them onto video 2, video 1, right? So that's what I've done essentially is to take, what's video 2 is our green screen shot with the foreground element, and video 1 is the background. So you can see to start, when I've finished, I end up with this, right? But to start, I have this, and I can't see the background unless I turn off the top layer, video 1, right? So that right now we have this. So now we got to work on how do we get rid of this green screen. So here we have the one with the blurred background, right? You can see I'm just toggling between turning on the monitor, video 2, video 1, right? So we've brought this into our timeline. Now to bring footage in, again, you can watch through the tutorials, but essentially what I'm doing is choosing on the left is our source, and on the right is our timeline or record, and this shows us the final product of what we're doing. So here's our source, what we've shot. So I've double click it and I've accessed it here, and then I can just take it and drag it in, bring it down. I can drag down like so, or I can also do what's called an overwrite edit, and it brings it in as well, right? So you can just drag those in. And then I've done the same thing with the backgrounds, right? I can take those and just drag them in, right? Or I can do an overwrite edit as well. So again, we want to get to this, but right now we're with this, and all we can do is turn it on or off. It's not automatic. So that's the one thing too. I want to make sure that everyone understands that just because you shot the green screen doesn't mean that the green just disappears. We've got to do a little bit of editing magic to make that happen. Now the great thing with this software, again, totally free. You just go to blackmagicdesign.com. You download it. If this particular version 16 I'm demoing on doesn't support your computer, you can always go back to older versions, and that's a great thing. They have, I think it goes back to 5 or 6, so you can go back a lot of operating system compatibility backwards. The only thing is you might not have all the effects that I'm going to demonstrate next. So in order to do green screen, we're going to use something called Fusion, and this is this next tab over here. And in Fusion, it's like After Effects, but instead of showing it as layers, we have something called these nodes. So it has media in one, so that's our shot right here, and then media out. And what we can do is we can make it do things in between. And in this case, we're going to make it do a chroma key in between it, and we're going to add a tool. So it's, instead of layers, think about it as like lines of an electrical circuit, if you will. So we go from here to a chroma key, and then we're going to go out. You can, again, rewatch this, so don't feel overwhelmed. It's not too complicated. It's very visual, and I think I like that about this Fusion software in terms of, versus After Effects. It sometimes can be a little bit harder to use. So I've been finding this Fusion to be quite intuitive visually to figure out. Okay, so what we want to do is we have this. So we're just dealing with the green screen. We don't have to do anything to our background, except I'll show another trick. In case we want to blur it, we can also do a blurring to it, which we'll show at the end. Okay, so in Fusion, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, and I have a camera set up here as well. So here's the keyboard. So here's my mouse. So whenever I say right click, I'm just right clicking, and then I get options on the monitor. Okay, so I'm going to right click right here in between, right click, and I'm going to add tool. And you can see it has a whole bunch of tools. There's like 25 or 30 different elements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the matte option. So a matte option, going back to mattes, that's the idea of the chroma key matte, right? So we're getting into a lot of terminology today, but if you think about a matte, it's that same idea. If you cut out a matte and you did like a spray paint over it, that matte blocks everything else out if you spray paint what's cut out. So that's the same idea with these mattes, is that it's blocking the other elements out, in this case our green, and then we're able to cut that out and create a transparent background. Okay, so we're going to use matte, and what I'm going to use here is Ultra Keyer, because it's a really robust tool that lets us get rid of the green. Okay, so I'm going to go Ultra Keyer, and again, it hasn't done anything, right? So my next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to click up here where it says background color, click on that, and now I'm going to use this eyedropper tool to choose specifically the green screen. So let me just bring this up a little bit closer here. Okay, so I'm going to use this eyedrop tool. I'm going to click on that, and now I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to just click right in the middle here on the green, and I'm going to click on it, and that, it hasn't done anything yet, and now I'm going to hit OK. And voila, we have our background removed. So that's the Ultra Keyer, and what I've done is just eyedropped, gone over to the background, the green, and now you can see it's totally transparent. So these like squares are showing us that it's a transparent background. So now, if I go back out to the Edit tool out of Fusion, so the bottom here is Fusion, and I'm going over to what's called Edit, so one over to the left. Look at that. We've now removed the green, and we have our subjects right on top of the background that I shot outside. But what we're seeing is a little bit of spill lines here, a little bit of transparency. So what I'm going to do is just fine tune the blue level in this case. So usually you can just do a little bit of red or blue correction. So right over here you can see there's a little bit of transparency spilling through the box, that wooden box, because there's probably a little bit of hint of green in that wood. So I'm just going to play with the blue here. Right? You can see I'm making it better or worse. Okay, and that's pretty nice. Blue and red levels. And what I've done is I've just got rid of the transparency factor. Now when I go back here, you can see that it's a lot less transparent now. So that's looking pretty good. Okay. And let's just go back in here again and do a little bit of background separation correction here. And we can also fine tune the green in terms of where the green is to get minimal background noise happening. Okay, and let's go back to edit. And there we go. Now we're pretty clean. Right, so we have our element of the foreground separated from the background, right? And we were able to just do it like that in Fusion. So we're using a Fusion tool. And again, Fusion is kind of like an After Effects type element here. And other software what you'll need to do is usually find something called Ultra Keyer, Chroma Keyer. So, this would translate to something like Adobe Premiere or Avid Media Composer, Final Cut, all this other kind of editing software, or anything else will usually have something called a Chroma Keyer, right? So that's one way to do it there. So let's look at this other one here. I'm just going to look at we'll look at another tool and just see how that works as well. So I'm going to again right click, add tool. I'm going to go to matte, Chroma Keyer. Okay, and I'm going to decide what color we want to do. Okay, and let's see right here. I'm going to go on color range, and And basically what I'm doing is just fine tuning how much green comes in or out by hitting this color range. And I'm going to go on the top side and basically just want it so it just cleans it out. So I'm just playing with this range, high-low range, and that's it. And then what we can do is we can also get rid of a little bit of the spill suppression. So it's getting rid of a little bit of the thing. So I'm just going spill method medium, spill color green. And then there's a few, we can play around with the kind of fringe sizes and the fringe gamma. And it just helps us kind of clean up that spill. So you can see if I go back to none, see that little bit of spill on the green there? If I go over to medium, it gets rid of that little bit of the green there. Let's go back to edit. This is what we've done with our chroma key. So it's another tool. There's ultra key, there's chroma key. Now what I like about the ultra key is that it really it lets me pick the specific color really well. And it's a little bit better in processing the background to make sure that we get rid of any elements that are in the green screen. So here, playing back, it's pretty nice and clean. And here's the chroma key. And it's not too bad, but you can see there's a little bit of noise happening, so it's going to need a little bit more cleanup work. So, you know, the next kind of levels of what you need to do is just, you know, go in here. We can do a little bit of like blurring around the actual alpha channel, and I can hit this invert matte, and this will show us, by inverting, it will show us kind of what we're dealing with. And see, if I'm blurring it, I can make it a little bit blurred. And this kind of gives you more of an idea of what, you know, what everything is doing in terms of the different colors. So I'm going here and I can really fine tune, you know, where I'm getting rid of everything and where there's just enough on the characters and I'm not getting rid of, I'm not replacing any of the background. Right, so you can see how that inverted, it's really showing me the strong cutout. So I'll go back here, I'm going to uninvert it, right? And again, I can see how, you know, it's a pretty clean cutout and everything's transparent. And voila, we have our background, right? And again, we've done a little bit of, the background is slightly out of focus, right? So by having it slightly out of focus, it kind of emulates what realistically that shot would look like because I wanted him to be in focus. Right? Versus the other shot here, when we go to this shot here, right? It's everything's in focus, right? So you know, it really helps to be able to show that you know, having something blurred. Okay, so let's look at one more thing. What happens if I didn't shoot the background out of focus, and I just wanted to change the blur? I should actually mention one more thing too. What you can do is in Fusion, we can, again, just if we want to right click over, so I'm just going to right click here and on the ultra key here. And what I can do is I can copy. So I will copy. Okay. And then I can go back to, you know, let's say another tool. Oops. Didn't want to open that. So I can go back to another tool and, you know, in that way make the, paste the other tool onto it, right? So you can do what then is called to paste your settings. So if I go over here, just over back here, go to Fusion, I'm going to right click again and I can go up here to paste settings and that will just paste over everything. So you don't, once you've created your chroma key setting in the ultra key, you can copy and paste that effect tool over to other ones, right? So I would just do like, okay, let's paste settings, right? Okay, so that's what we can do in terms of how do we make that work as I keep opening different pieces of software. Okay, so that's taken us through the different elements there. Now, what I wanted to show you guys is so this background is definitely in focus, right? So this background right here is totally in focus, right? So that, and versus this one that I shot blurred. So let's say we didn't shoot a blurred one, all is not lost. We can still create a blur using effects. So what I can do is actually create, I'm going to, right under here, under filters, I'm going to put a Gaussian blur, like so. So now what I've done is I've actually created a blur on what was previously a sharp background. So it kind of emulates it. And then I can go over to the inspector tool here. And under open effects, I can decide how much blur I want. So 0 is sharp, and I can make it super blurred. So I can decide how much of a background I want it to be in or out of focus. So that's a really cool thing. So that's just up here in open effects under inspector. And I can then choose the effect. So instead of it being sharp, like here, that's the same shot in the background, but I've made it out of focus by adding what's called a Gaussian blur. And you can really use any of these blurs over here. There's a radial, mosaic, lens blur, so that can be used as well. I like the Gaussian one. It just creates kind of a nice overall even blur effect, right? So that's a really cool effect. So this is one of my best practice tips is green screen looks quite realistic when your background actually starts to look like a background that's blurred versus when it's just a sharp background. It starts to sometimes look a little bit fake. But we expect that, usually our foreground is slightly more sharp. So this makes it a little more realistic just by adding a little bit of a blur. Right? So that's kind of the whole breakdown of what we're doing. So again, we've taken the shot, we've edited it into video 2. Then we have our background on video 1, right? So the 2 layers are required, right? We want to have the layer 1, layer 2, right? So video 2 is our whole green screen shot. Video 1 is going to be like our background, whatever is going to be underneath it. That background could be anywhere. It could be, we can get a photo, we can get a piece of video, whatever kind of background we want. I really encourage you to shoot your own backgrounds because it's fun to, we can put these characters on a beach. So we can just go to Wasaga Beach and shoot a beach shot and then put these characters right on top of it, right? So we've done the 2 layers. Then we've gone over to Fusion. We've used the Ultra Keyer, right? And we've removed the background. As you can see, you get these checkerboards in the Ultra Keyer tool. And all I've done is I've sampled with the color picker the actual green in the background, then it removes it and it creates what's called an alpha channel. And again, I can invert this to see what I'm doing, like how much of a green screen. So you can see there's a little bit of overlap happening, but it looks pretty clean once it's output here, right? And that's our background, foreground, right? And this is the blurred shot, and then I've added into this sharp shot the Gaussian blur. So it's totally sharp, but I can make it super blurred all the way to wherever I want it, right? So that's kind of fun. You can make a fake blur. It's easier to blur footage than it is to sharpen it, right? So that's the key is if you're not sure if you're gonna want it blurred, just shoot it totally in focus and then blur it after. But that really helps sell the green screen is having that, background like that. Okay, so I hope that helped so far. Again, we went from the shot over here. So we had a green screen shut up. This is the shot we captured, and then we've composited and put it together in Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve. Again, totally free software, and this equipment can be accessed through our libraries. So let's look at some of the questions. I'll just go over to some Q&A now. So we have our first question here. Today's webinar, where can we find it on the YouTube channel? So we will be posting this. It always takes a little bit of time. We just render out, we record these, render them out, put them on the YouTube channel. But if you're on this seminar today, this webinar, you can rewatch it directly through Crowdcast. So right when we're done, you'll be able to rewatch it on this. So that's a great option. You can review it, watch it, and what we'll do is I'm going to be creating basically a online educational toolkit that will let you then get this footage and try it out in DaVinci as well. So we'll have that up in the next week or so as we populate more elements. So that's where everything will be. Okay. Here's a question. How do we use outside in natural light? Okay, so yeah, great question. So basically what we do is we take this whole screen and we bring it outside. And the key here is to make sure that it's facing the sun. And that way the sun is creating that natural like overcast. Now, the thing is today, for example, we have a beautiful overcast sky. So there isn't a harsh sunlight. If it's really harsh, what we might need to add is some sort of a diffusing element. So we can use the reflector kits that are also available through the libraries. And the reflector kit has a diffuser on top. So by putting that over in front of the sunlight, basically, it will diffuse into the background. So it allows it to work without harsh shadows. So we want some sort of a diffusing element. Now, one thing I should mention too is the green screen. If you have really, like we're using these smaller elements of just the toys here, they're not so large. So, start smaller. This is a great practice tool. It's like just use, a stuffed animal. Use something smaller to really work around green screen. It gets harder the bigger it becomes. So, we've probably seen background shots that are of film sets that are huge, that could be, 100 meters wide of a green screen by, 20 meters tall. That's really massive and huge and requires a lot of lighting. So if you start small and really perfect it, understand it, try it out in Resolve and see what works, what doesn't work, what can you make better. By starting out small, you can help make sure you have all the knowledge base so that you can then get into a bigger shot. So in this setup today, we could definitely have a person sitting there, kind of shoulder up, but it's probably not a big enough green screen to have a full length, like a full head to toe body shot. So this would be ideal for like kind of an interview setup and just kind of shoulders above. So again, if you're doing some sort of online courses or interviews, you might want to have that kind of green screen so you can set yourself up. So again, with the current situation, with the pandemic, we can really use things like that where you can put a green screen up and maybe you are virtually in a restaurant having an interview with someone else and then have that background added. So this kind of size, so this is about, trying to think, it's about 6 feet, about a couple meters by 2 meters by 2 meters kind of square is the size, can fit that. So you always need to make sure you have more green screen than what the subject is, and you want to have enough light. So if this was a lot bigger, I would need to start having more light. So there could be top lights above, again, all angled. And what we're just looking for is, it's not that magical in terms of the lighting concepts, but it's to create flat, even lighting on the green screen. That's our goal. So whatever the size is, we just keep adding it. We might need more lights. There can be lights from the bottom, from the top, but we want to get rid of all the shadows. So as much lighting as that's required from angles to get rid of all the shadows is our goal, right? So that's how we can do that. Okay, so let me just see if there's any other questions. I think that's it. Yeah. So again, we've gone, from green screen to the shot to the final, and I hope that really helps demystify some of the green screen elements. I think it can be, it can be quite intense sometimes to figure out, how do we do things in green screen. But I'm hoping that that really helps to, again, demystify the element and show what's possible and how it's not really that complicated, right? So all we need is, if we can shoot something like this, we want to just shoot our subjects, have the background green that's totally illuminated, try to have it out of focus. It helps soften it again. And, we go from there. So we have that. You can see it's a bit harsher looking there, but once we have this shot front on with the softer background, it really helps diffuse what we can see here, a little bit of shadows. So that softness in the focus helps really fix that, right? So a lot of great tips and tricks. I hope we've enlightened everyone in terms of what can happen in green screen. Again, it's not really overly complicated. Start with some basics, work your way up to larger green screen, but definitely start small. And I encourage everyone to access some of the tools that are available through our libraries. So the cameras, the lights are all available. And there is a green screen kit available at the Blue Mountains Library it's called the Crafty lighting kit. So there's additional lights with a green screen cloth in there. Thank you to all of you for joining us, and I will see you again soon. Have a great rest of the day.